This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Today we are here with someone who helped us turn Ivy Unleashed and Gold Ivy into a reality. He is the man behind our branding, our incredible, beautiful, amazing website.
Yes.
Not only is he a very talented web designer, he's also an American Ninja Warrior.
Yes. And so, first of all, welcome to Ivy Unleashed, Patrick Lagman.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
We are too. I can't believe it. I've known Patrick since he was in high school. He is good friends with my brother-in-law and Brooke's cousin, Jordan. And so this has been really fun to kind of watch you become like, Patrick's a dad and a really successful businessman. And now, going to be on American Ninja Warrior. And so we just want to kind of dive into how you got to this place where you are going to be on this incredible show.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it's a story that I've realized has a lot of kind of parallel avenues. But I think, there's the fitness piece. There's definitely the personal piece. You mentioned that you knew me in high school. As far as a maturity standpoint, I'm sure I would not have gotten as generous of an introduction at the time, and that would have been fair. So I think there's a personal piece to that, in which there's been a lot of ups and downs, which I know is not unique, and that we've all had ups and downs, but it's unique in that I have been lucky enough to get to be here with you and maybe talk about some of them today. I think there's also the family piece that I definitely want to touch on. My family. I'll just mention my wife's name is Bailey. I'll refer to her. My wife is obviously a little bit impersonal, so for people listening, that's Bailey and my daughter LJ and Harlow, and they obviously are a huge part of the picture too, and making me the person that I am today.
Okay, so you first said fitness piece. So talk about that. I know there's a lot of work that goes behind, and we saw your audition tape, and you're flying, and fitness is not an issue for you. So talk to us about how that came about.
I think that I've always loved to move. I think on the highest level, that's it. It's just I love to move. I need to be moving, and that's had a lot of different. That's culminated in a lot of different ways throughout the course of my life. Initially, it was sports, basketball and tennis that I took through high school and college. And then after that, I just, especially as I got into reading more and just, and honestly, just being a little more disciplined and deciding I wanted to hone in on certain pieces of that craft. And also after having finished being a competitive more traditional competitive athlete, I realized I had different things I wanted to pursue. And it actually kind of started with nutrition. What you might not know, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but my parents actually own a farm, which is a self-sustaining farm scale permaculture. And so that's become a big part of our lives is eating really good food, really nutrient rich food. And I think getting into that, there was a natural progression into caring a lot more about how my body was being impacted by the things I was eating. And then it ended up complementing that kind of movement lifestyle that I had really, really started to pursue on a deeper level. And, I'll talk about some of those things, but I think once you start eating for energy, you start doing things more effectively and more efficiently, and you are able to take yourself further in your fitness pursuits. And that's kind of what I found. And it really became a lifestyle change more than anything else. Even from when I was an athlete to after that, it really became less of a competition journey, though that is deeply ingrained and still a part of it, and more of a wellness journey. And how that started to play out was once the fitness started to follow the nutrition, I tried different types of lifting. I tried different types of cardio. I, at a certain point, convinced myself I would never be an endurance athlete. And I no longer believe that. I got into some different pieces of natural movement, barefoot running, which has actually worked for me. I'm not going to be the person who tells everyone to go out and run on their bare feet, but because distance was an issue for me, that was something I incorporated, and I no longer have any knee and back pain, and can go out and run 15 miles and feel fantastic. And I actually enjoy running now. So there was a cardio piece and definitely a big change there, an epiphany in that. And that took me to a new level. And then building up certain levels of strength, certain levels of endurance, and then saying, why am I doing all of this? And I knew that there was a certain level of return on investment that you obviously get from that. You know, you want to be healthy so you can enjoy life, right? Be fit to be useful. But there was still that, as I mentioned, that competitive piece. And I wanted to have something that I could work towards. And I realized that American Ninja Warrior, interestingly enough, who's here with me today, my father-in-law kind of just mentioned in passing as we were watching it, said, Patrick, and it was also his son, Bryce, Patrick and Bryce, I think you guys would be good at that. We said, haha, yeah, maybe. And I thought about it. And at the end of 2020, we were coming up with our big goals for 2021, and just thought, I'm going to apply to American Ninja Warrior at the end of the year because why not? It'll give me something to work towards. It'll be a way to measure the progress and all of these things, which I've been putting a ton of time into. It'll give me another why. And I made that my goal. And at the end of 2021, I applied.
Wow.
And now I'm here.
Wow. So a whole year of making this decision, and then a whole year of figuring out, like, am I capable of this? And I'm assuming there's got to be some type of injuries or like learning curve with grabbing the stuff, like
running bare feet,
hurting your back, or like, did you run into, like, in that year, did it go just well for you, or did you run into any obstacles when you were training?
Plenty. I think it was very humbling. Because I've watched the show, and you see a lot of the things that people do on the show, and plenty of them are like, that, that's pretty insane. I can't believe that person's doing that. And others sit back and like, oh, maybe I could do that if I went out and tried that right now. It's been very humbling to try the different jumps, try the different catches, grabs, holds, things like that. It probably won't show well in the video, but my hands they look very different than they did a year ago. I'm learning different things. There's little rock climbing pieces. I'm learning that you're supposed to, build up calluses, but also file them down. There's gymnastics pieces so that when you're swinging around a bar, if you don't file down your calluses, you'll catch them. I ripped off 3 calluses off of my hands on one swing. Sorry if that's TMI for everybody, but
we love
TMI. Things that I never really knew were going to be part of it. Like I know my general fitness is pretty good. My strength is pretty good. It's been definitely eye-opening and humbling while learning some of the more technical pieces, or I should also say these things that I've never actually done before, having a new respect for some of those things, some of those obstacles that I know I will eventually face. And one thing that has actually been really helpful and also sometimes humbling is being able to work with other people who have done it or working towards doing it, or just meeting the owner of Gymfinity, for example, in Madison, who had some, tips on, I ripped my hands. I've never done this before. What do I do? And he knew exactly what to do as a competitive gymnastics coach. So it's been a very interesting journey into a very new side of fitness that I haven't experienced yet, which is exciting.
So talk us through that journey, right? So you apply, and then do they give you specific training moves and like a schedule to follow, or how did you know exactly what to do and who to reach out to? Like, for someone who has no idea, aka us, what this process looks like, can you kind of fill us in on what that looks like?
Well, I'm in the same boat as you, and I think that they really do have you just flying by the seat of your pants, no pun intended, but you kind of have to figure it out. And what I was able to figure out was just kind of 5 pieces that you really want to work on, because you don't get to know what's going to come up in the course. It's all entirely a surprise. From what I understand, we get to see the testers run the course, and that's it. And that's the day that we run it. So you're supposed to, at least this is some of the wisdom I've been able to find, you're supposed to work on body awareness, of course. So when you're flying through the air, you need to be able to maintain focus, strength, balance, because there's balance obstacles as well, grip strength specifically, and then also cardio. So those are kind of the 5 pieces I've been really focusing in on. And some come a little more naturally to me. I think the body awareness piece comes a little more natural because I've spent time in the air, whether it's tennis, basketball, getting knocked out of the air at times, but that's something I'm a little more used to. The grip strength is very new. I'm not a rock climber in the past or anything like that. So that's very new. But I mentioned that piece is exciting because I've found something that I can make significant progress in that's completely new. I'm not necessarily getting faster now that I'm 31. I'm not going to be jumping higher. I can try to maintain some of those things and try and mitigate the depreciation of some of those pieces of my athleticism or fitness. But now I found something that's completely new that I can make a lot of gains in and fairly quickly, kind of like when you first start doing something, like when you first start lifting, you can get stronger faster. I had never really worked on finger strength. And so in a short amount of time, my fingers have been able to get a lot stronger, which is cool because it takes you again to kind of that next place in your journey.
It's so interesting because I think something people don't realize is like me as a marathoner, I did the barefoot running too to strengthen things when I had a knee problem. And you were doing this with your hands too. And it's something people don't think about, having severe pain on your fingertips or hands or your toes and like blisters and calluses. Like I never let anybody see my feet if I don't have to. It's so gross. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this. One time you watch the testers and you just have to, all of this training, all of this time.
That you had to find on your own. No one gave you this.
Right. And you're going to be standing there watching them do it. And in that time, trying to absorb what you can, you're going to have to be so in the zone. Like, how are you going to get yourself into that headspace of being calm and like capable of even being able to breathe through this process?
That's a huge part of the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gotta be.
I've thought about that quite a bit. For example, I've been in high pressure situations with tennis, with basketball. I think on a certain level, I feel like that can be maybe an advantage. Is for someone who maybe has not participated in sports for much of their life. And I have met some people that are going to be on the show who kind of say, oh, this is a very new thing that I'm pursuing. I've never participated in athletics my whole life. And they've actually mentioned that piece of it. At the same time, from a sports psychology standpoint, what was always comforting for me, or at least what I always taught myself to go back to, for example, when I was serving for match point, I know that I have hit 10,000, 100,000 serves in my entire life, right? So my body knows exactly what it's supposed to do, and my mind can only get in the way. In this situation, these movements are new. And so I think there's a couple pieces. I think one of the pieces is that I can do as much as I possibly can as far as repetition goes. And I don't know what's coming up. So just trying to do as much variety as possible. And then there's also the mindfulness aspect where I just have to try and zone in as much as possible and hope that I can hone in on that repetition, even though it's not going to be as significant as some things that I've done with a lot more quantity, I guess.
I can't wait to hear what that experience is like after the fact too, of, how many people are there? Like, do you know how they pick who goes first, or is it random?
No sense of the order. I know that it's in a few different groups, and we'll essentially all be in one room, kind of in the back, and we will have TVs in which we can watch the other people doing their runs and cheer them on. But other than that, there's no sense of what time of day we'll get to go. I think it's pretty much a window that I'll have to provide to my family that's going to be on the live stream, so video conferencing in. And then Bailey is going to come and watch live, just her.
Because it's in San Antonio, right?
Yes.
So you go down, you watch the trial, and then you just go. And then what?
Yeah.
And then if you win the course, if you complete the course, then what happens?
So it's based on how far you get or how many obstacles you complete, and then how fast. And I believe that they take about half of the competitors through to the next round per regional. And there's 5 qualifying sections per se, and then I know they take about 30 people, I think, from each, including there's a much higher ratio of men in the competition, and so they always take the top 5 women, no matter where they place within that top 30 or if they're outside of it.
And then you could end up in a different city for the next round. Is that how that works? You kind of continue to travel as far as you go?
Correct. Yes. So if I were to finish the qualifying course, that would more than likely be enough. If I were to hit the buzzer, that would more than likely be enough to move on to the semifinal, which would be in Los Angeles in April. And then if I were to complete that course or get further than enough people, the finals would be in Las Vegas in May.
So you're the kind of person that can put yourself in those, like, you can see yourself in Vegas. You're like, I'm just going to do San Antonio. I'm going to think about this first step first. Like, do you allow yourself to think about Vegas?
I think that I'm the type of person that if I think about the layup before I start dribbling, I will dribble it off my foot right out of bounds.
Okay. So you're locked in on San Antonio.
I'm locked in on San Antonio, and I was locked in on applying. Now I'm locked in on this new goal. And if I can achieve this new goal, then I'll lock in on the next one.
Got it. I like it, one step at a time. And I'm sure with each step is just a whirlwind of emotions. So I'm curious what emotions you've been experiencing from the minute you sent in your audition tape or you even decided to do this to where you are now. Like, how did that change through this process for you?
When I submitted my application, I felt a relief in the sense that I was proud that I had achieved that first goal. Then kind of set that aside. I was proud to do it. I was happy at the progress I made. And then I, frankly, unexpectedly got the call. And I was really, really thrown back, really excited, big smile on my face during that phone call. Couldn't really believe it. And then all of a sudden I stepped back and I was like, whoa, I'm going to be on this TV show and this athletic competition that I've watched for a long time. I better start putting my nose to the grindstone and really zoning in, because I think though I put that work in to apply, it was a completely different feeling when, okay, now I'm actually going to be doing it. And so before, in that year leading up to applying, I could convince myself that, okay, I'm doing this month where I'm focusing on running. So I ran a Ragnar race in September, and I definitely lost a certain amount of strength that I had built up over the course of the year, because then I was running for really, really close to 3 months getting ready for that. And I could kind of get away with that in that year leading up to the application process. But then all of a sudden, knowing I'm going to be on the show, it's all very specific. It's all zoning in, locking in. I'm only practicing potential obstacles, locking in on those 5 things that I mentioned, trying as many variety of weird grips and jumps and different things like that, kind of putting my body in that position that it's going to be in when I get to the show. So I think that was one of the big differences too, in mindset.
It's like, holy shit, this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
How would you say you're feeling in this moment? So it's what, 2 weeks away until you go to San Antonio when we're recording this right now. So it's coming up. So how are you feeling right now? Yeah,
it is coming up. So I think I want to say, I guess I'm 16, not even at 15 days out now. And a lot of good emotions, but not all good at the same time. I think at times I have definitely some doubt has crept in, especially as I've seen just some really impressive other ninjas, even some just high schoolers. I realized that there's these just young kids that are so good at this stuff. And so, like I said, it's humbling, but at the same time, some doubt creeping in at times, wondering, am I ready to do this? Can I do this? And I think that's natural too. Right now, I'm feeling pretty optimistic, but I did have a shoulder injury last week on Wednesday, and I was pretty bummed. You put so much work in, you get one shot at this, and then you have to wait for another year. And not only that, but decide if you want to commit to it for another year. And so I was bummed. for a day or two. I was a little bit down, and I think as it started to heal, or I just started to just try and continue to focus on things I could still do, things I could still strengthen, still work on cardio. I started to get into a better mindset and stay optimistic and back into that place where I'm just going to go out there and leave everything I possibly can on the course, whatever that means at that time. And then I've reached my goal.
So leaving it feeling like 100%, I gave it everything I have no regrets. Like that's the goal. Yeah,
exactly. I think it can be hard to accept, but injuries are part of it. No matter what your athletic pursuit is, you're probably going to get hurt at some point. And it's really more of a mindset in moving forward and doing that next thing.
I think this like parallels to so many things in life. I'm thinking about, how you can beat yourself up about anything and how to have the mindset and the approach of, making sure you're focusing on the different variety in your life, the different moving pieces. You're a family man, you're a businessman, you're an athlete. I know that you do focus on personal development yourself. And so, how do you feel like, if you were to kind of take this American Ninja Warrior experience so far and apply it to your life, what parallels have you seen just in this last year?
That's a great question. I think that one of the things that I have at the front of my mind a lot when it comes to this American Ninja Warrior journey, it is just one thing. And like you said, a lot of pieces of my life, and it's certainly not even the most important thing, but for me, it's definitely a representation of going for it, reaching a goal. It's a culmination of having the habits of believing in yourself and trying something new and putting yourself out there, and then making the decisions or putting the work in to then achieve it. I think it's an example of that for me because I think that I have gone the other route when it comes to that fork in the road a lot of times in my life where I was afraid of that failure or afraid of that rejection of putting myself out there and then putting in the work. I think I was also afraid of, if I make this commitment, then what? What does that mean next? And not diving into that, not diving into the deep end. And for me, it's definitely, like I said, even though it's just one piece, it's something I would not have done a decade ago. It's something I wouldn't have been ready to do a decade ago. And honestly, there was plenty of times in that last month where, I almost didn't apply. And just because it would have been easier not to. And I could have rationalized that, well, I put all this great work in, and it's not like I didn't get anything from that. I'm in better shape. I've learned a lot. Do I need to make this big commitment or really put myself out there and go on this big TV show and where a lot of people are going to see me and I'll really be vulnerable? So that crossed my mind too. And then I thought, no, that's not the person I am now. I'm the person who submits this application, and I'm so glad I did. Even if I hadn't gotten the call, that was a big part of the reason that it felt like I had achieved what I had set out to achieve.
Yeah, just watching your tape is so much about you as a person, you as a family man. I mean, fun fact for all the people that don't know Patrick, he can also rap and writes music. And so I wish we could share it with you, but you'll probably see it on the show. He's hanging like a ninja and rapping into a microphone at the same time. Like, it's unbelievable. And so I think just something that I feel like, a lot of our listeners, most people in the world, we have these talents or we have these things that, these callings, right? Like, you had your father-in-law say something about this American Ninja Warrior thing, and like something inside of you resonated with it. Something inside of you was like, maybe, Mm-hmm. And I feel like in different ways, we all get this messaging, whether it's like from God or a friend, or you read something and it like gives you
Strikes
this
a chord.
feeling. Yeah. And so Brooke and I, a big part of what we want to do is like help people listen to that. And so I'm curious if you have any advice for people, or like if there's anything you do, because you have a lot of different skills, how you decide to just go for it. Like, is it just like it just happens for you, or do you have a conversation with somebody else or yourself?
To be fair, it took me a long time to get there. And I think it does take some reflection and some self-awareness, because I think a big part of it is trust. Trusting yourself. I mean, trusting your support network, and I certainly bounce ideas off all the people around me that I know care about me. But really just having that trust in yourself. And I know that that can be a journey. It certainly was for me, but I think my best advice that I could give on that is have that trust in yourself, and then be a yes person, be an opportunist, knowing that I like to think that I think opportunities are kind of dominoes falling upwards. I think that when you're opportunistic, it opens up other opportunities. It opens up other doors. And I think you can have plans for what you want to do, but there's only so much you can control. And I think one of the most exciting pieces about being an opportunist, or just being a yes person, is the fact that you don't know what doors are coming next. And there's so many examples of that for me, and I won't get into all of them, but you just don't know how things are going to play out. The job I have now, for example, I got because I coach tennis. There's no relation to it, working for a billion-dollar public software company versus just being a tennis coach. But one of my colleagues, their parents at the time, they're still their parents. At the time, their parents were hiring a user experience designer, which was what I was studying in college. They came around. I had my interview next to the tennis court. We hit it off. I started there as an intern, doing web design, mostly front end coding. And eventually one thing led to another. That company grew 6 times and then got acquired by a bigger company. And I fell into a different role and just kept saying yes. And, just kept saying, oh yeah, I'll work on that project, or I'll work on this project, or I'll work with that person. Cause who knows what that'll bring. But it definitely, like I said, took a lot of trust in myself that I could also succeed in whatever I was saying yes to. And so I think that's the hardest part. And you might not always know that you can, but then you just have to do it and be okay with the fact that you might not. That's okay too. But if you say yes, then you will eventually get to a place where you build up these habits and build up this continuous state of progress and progression, and you'll just continue to move in that direction. A stone. This is another quote I love. I'm sorry, I'm bringing in all these quotes, but
do you know who you're talking to?
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah, you're right. You guys love quotes. I know that about you from working on the website. It's because most people can say things much more elegantly than I can. That's why I love quotes.
That's why we use them too.
But a stone turned over with nothing under it is still progress. But you have to be willing to look, and you have to trust yourself in order to look. And so that is my long-winded advice on that.
What I'm curious is how this became a part of you, right? Being this yes man, you said that you did the work, you've done that reflection. So I'm curious how you got to be so confident in your ability to do American Ninja Warrior, to have that trust in yourself. Is it something that always came natural, or was there a turning point for you in your life where you're like, something's got to change and now I'm going to put the work in myself? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, interestingly enough, it kind of took me being in the opposite state of mind to get to this new state of mind. It's kind of a story of a pretty precocious little kid, very inquisitive, loved to learn, didn't really have the self-awareness to understand that I was certainly different than a lot of other kids in certain ways. And then to what I am now, but the story is kind of in the middle. So I think it's a really good question, because I think that it was a really big personal journey for me. And I have talked to you guys about the ADD, which I was diagnosed with very young. Also depression as well at a very young age when I was 5 years old. And that has come, those pieces have kind of, excuse me, come in and out of my life in different ways. And I understand them so much more now than I did then, especially in the sense of how those things that were a little more out of my control impacted my journey. I think that at a very young age, I started to realize that I was different. And rather than latch onto that and be kind of dive into that and be confident about that, I definitely took the route of looking at other people, seeing that I didn't fit in, or that I was a little more spacey, or I would struggle a little more socially because someone would be having a conversation and then I would say something that they were talking about 15 minutes earlier and getting made fun of for that. And those things kind of added up. And I realized all of a sudden that I was in this place where I was trying to be other people, or seeing like, what does that person do? Why does everyone think that person's cool? Can I be more like that person? How does that person talk or converse, and can I act like that? Or, seeing people on TV shows or whatever else. And I think that really became a driving force in my life. And I think it really distracted me from and kind of made me forget that little kid who loved to learn, who did dive into those things that were different, that, loved to draw maps when I was 7. I became the kid who won the GOB in 4th grade and was edging out 8th graders in this GOB to the kid who was a B or even a C student. And then what kind of happened was there was a huge disconnect for what I still knew I wanted to be, or this potential that I knew I had to be someone, or even you could even say who I kind of dreamed to be, because I always kind of wanted to do big things or thought that I could. And that disconnect with that, and then what I was actually doing or where I was. And it took a long time to figure that out. For a long time, I was too young really to figure it out, or to reflect on and understand why I was doing the things I was doing, or why this had turned into a big piece of me that was self-doubt, that was driving some of my decisions, where I knew what I should do in the moment. And then instead I did what I wanted to do because that was the easier thing to do. I didn't trust myself to make the right decision and put myself on a path of commitment or responsibility, and know that I would succeed in that. So there was a couple pieces of that. Mostly I was just lost, and it was disappointing because I definitely let plenty of people down that I cared about. Certainly my parents, certainly friends, certainly relationships at the time that I didn't really understand why I wasn't good at them. But for whatever reason, through that process, I think I was able to remain accountable. I never placed the blame elsewhere, and for whatever poor decisions I was making, I always understood that it was me making them. And eventually I was able to, and it went downward for a while, for sure. Eventually I was able to realize that, okay, now I need to start doing the things I should do instead of the things I want to do. I know, Andrea, you know this, our house burnt down when I was living with Jordan. And that was actually following me actually more or less getting kicked out of my parents' house because I just wasn't deciding to follow the rules that they were putting in place for me to live at home after I'd come back from my first school. And for whatever reason, when I was living with Jordan, our house burned down, and at the time, no one actually knew where I was. I lived in the basement, and I was staying at my girlfriend's that night at the time, and it was kind of scary. And for whatever reason, they came to me. It was a few days after that, and they said, Patrick, if you can get your part-time grades up and show us that you're committed to doing better, we'll help you have the opportunity to go to Edgewood College in the fall. And I was in a place at that point where I wasn't willing to squander what I considered a huge opportunity to go back and do something that I still very much valued, which was get a college degree. And up until that point, I didn't really necessarily see light at the end of the tunnel in my opportunity to do that. Not only that, but it was another opportunity for me to connect with athletics and play college sports again. Two things, school and sports, that were ways in which I knew how to succeed, and something new to work towards. And so once I got back on that track, I still had a lot of work to do, especially personally. But I had some structure, and I was able to start building new habits. I had done a lot of music, as you mentioned, especially in that time. It was an outlet for me. When I was having some of that self-doubt, I wrote so much music, hundreds of songs. And interestingly enough, though, at the time, I didn't see it this way. It actually reconnected me with my creativity and that piece of me that I knew when I was a lot younger. Certainly a piece of me that was different, a piece of me that was eccentric and unique. And I poured that into my songs. And not only that, but it was a world that I knew nothing about, where I've been reconnected with how much I love to learn, and carry that into what I'll call my second try at school. And it just became a completely different journey from there. I said yes to everything because I didn't want to miss my next opportunity to try something. So it was tennis. It was at one point I was going to play basketball too. Decided to just do the one sport and focus on school. It was my professor asked me if I wanted to build the new art department website with them. Yes, of course, I would love to do that. Do you want to be the web designer for the school paper? Yes, I would love to do that. Another really cool experience. And just building towards those different things. And same with music too. Do you want to do this performance? Yeah, why not? I'd never been on a stage until I was 20. And I was incredibly nervous, but I started saying yes to those things. And I built up some confidence from that. I was like, oh, I can do this music thing and people actually like it and they want to listen to it. And my stuff was terrible at first, but then eventually it got pretty good. And that helped me build up some confidence too. So I guess that's the best way I can describe how something shifted there. I had said no to myself so many times that it eventually completely changed the person that I was. And once I had the opportunity to re-grasp that person, I had no choice but to continue to say yes.
Wow, that was so beautiful that you just went through all of that, and tragic and sad and beautiful. And I love that you took such an ugly, hard time in your life and it just flourished into all of these incredible things. And what I'm hearing too is like a combination of you believing in yourself, but also kind of getting sparked too by others believing in you, or, you know, giving you like some of these opportunities. And so, you know, you being people asking you to do these things, or your parents, you know, to give you opportunities, you know, how much did that feed into you believing in yourself?
I think there's an important point to bring up there, that I'm incredibly fortunate to have a support system. Even if at times it was completely up to me to make the change, my parents definitely never gave up on me. And that was a huge thing. They, you know, at times they initially told me to consider taking a year off before going into school. I didn't, the first time around with college, I didn't want to believe that I wasn't ready. They turned out to be right about that, as well as so many other things, obviously. I think that it was really, really hard for them to say enough is enough, and really make me have to figure it out on my own. And even at the time, I knew that they had to do that. I was sad, they were sad, but I knew that I hurt them, and not the other way around, and that they were doing something that I knew wasn't easy for them, as far as pushing me to make a change, and that definitely did inspire me, motivate me. Even if I didn't figure it out the next day, it was always there and in the back of my mind. You definitely figure out who your real friends are in those moments. There's plenty of people who wrote me off, like, oh, Patrick, he couldn't figure out college the first time. You know, he's nothing. But I had so many friends still that Jordan's told me this a million times, actually. He said, you know, I kept seeing you screw up, but for some reason, I always knew you were going to figure it out. And I know that, that's, he kind of jokes about that.
Do you want to know what he says about you? Is he says that the thing about Patrick is that he always took accountability for any mess up. He never gave one excuse for anything. And I don't even know what he's talking about for these mess ups or whatever. I mean, you guys are friends in high school. There's going to be times that everybody messes up and makes mistakes or whatever. But that was his thing, is he's like Patrick and I stayed friends through all of our shenanigans because, he was just such a good friend that he would own up to anything and apologize and never made excuses. And so he just thinks the world of you.
That's wonderful to hear. I think that even sometimes other people would say, did Jordan give you that shot? It's like, no, Jordan didn't give me that shot. I drank that shot. Jordan loves to be an instigator, but yeah, no, he's spot on. I think that it's funny. I've gotten a jaywalking ticket. I've gotten a ticket for cutting a roundabout. Plenty of underage drinking tickets at parties where other people there were doing the exact same thing and didn't get them. And I could just say, oh, I'm unlucky. And at times I thought that, but that is completely unuseful and does not breed any progress. And I think that was always there in the back of my mind. And again, for me, I tended to be a slow learner for whatever reason. And I think there were a lot of demons to conquer there and figure out, and a lot of reflecting to do. But now that I have, I get it. And I understand a lot of that. But yeah, I never felt the need to blame other people for the things that I was doing.
I think that's an incredible quality. And I also think you can't make real change until you get out of the victim mentality, right? Until you take that full ownership. I think of the work that Andrew and I have done with our coaches, and it's the idea of being in cause versus effect. And when you're in effect, you're the victim. And when you're in cause, you are the captain of your own ship. And sometimes it takes hitting that rock to wake up and to say, okay, no one can change this, my outcome, my story, my situation, but me. And it's hard work and it sucks waking up to that reality, but it's also empowering to know that the only person that can do anything is you, that you have the power within you to create the life that you want. And you're doing that. And to have your girls look up to you and, this message that you're putting out in the world, it's so beautiful. You're saying yes, you're being this yes man. What I keep thinking of is, how do you set those boundaries for yourself? Because you can burn out when you are a yes man. I'd like to think that I'm a yes girl. And I do feel like, okay, am I taking on way too much? So I'd love to hear how you set those boundaries or how you've kind of created those for yourself over the years.
Yeah, I think because it was something that was new and it was a new journey that I had to figure out the balance. Mm-hmm. You can only do so much. And I think I'm actually only just recently starting to figure that out. As you said, I've had to turn down some business, which is weird. I would usually just be the person who would say, yes, of course, I'll do that. And I would work on it till 4 a.m. if I had to. But I think at a certain point, that's not sustainable. I think also, I've been fortunate enough to, I guess through being opportunistic, be able to find those things in which I do want to stay consistent with. The things that something's got to give, but some things can't. Family time. Certainly my career, my day job, I'll call it. I have a couple of businesses on the side as well, but there's certain things and certain avenues that once you start going down them and you have, I guess, figured out best practice for those things, and you see how those pieces fall into place and how that structure falls into place in your life, and the things that you really can't do without, you have to start weighing the pros and cons or the risk reward of some of the other things that come in.
Again, taking ownership of your time, your schedule, and your values. Like, what do you want to be a part of your calendar? And what does that look like structure-wise is kind of what I'm hearing.
I think one very interesting interesting piece, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, was also finding a balance between being a yes person and also working through what I had talked about, where I also was placing my happiness in other people aside from myself. And so finding a balance there. You talked about boundaries, making sure that I wasn't and don't now say yes to people because I won't say afraid to let them down, because I think it is important to come through for people, especially if you make a commitment, and it's just about being transparent and honest with yourself when making those commitments, but making sure that I'm being true to myself when I do say yes, because that can be easy, especially when a lot of the journey was having to figure out who I was and what I wanted to say yes to, and not letting those outside influences or other people that I thought I wanted to be like drive that progress.
Yeah, and doing the work to know who you are, right? I feel like that's this message that I keep hearing you say is, what do I like doing? What are my outlets? Music is important to me. Family is important to me. Like, it takes that time. We always say it to quiet that outside noise and say, what does bring me joy?
But what I'm curious about is, when are you doing this? Like, do you have set aside reflection time? Like, when do you hear yourself think? And how do you figure out what to streamline? Especially as a male, I feel like it's so much more socially acceptable to be like, oh, I sat and reflected with my coffee. Like, is that what you do, or what's it look like for you?
I'm laughing because I think it's all the time. my brain is talking to itself all the time. And I think that's just a part of my personality. And sometimes it's just about sifting through those thoughts. And what I've actually gotten, I think, pretty good at doing is writing down as much as I possibly can. When I think of something and I say, oh, I never really thought of it that way, writing it down. And I didn't used to do that. But I think that's also helped me organize those thoughts. But yeah, mostly it's constant, which is a vice and a virtue, I think.
So do you carry around a little notebook in your back pocket, or do you do it on your phone, or where are you writing things down?
I'm a serial note taker in my iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah, notepad. Yeah, I have way too many notes, but that has started to work for me. Checklists, all kinds of notes, whether it's quotes. Sometimes I'll write 5 paragraphs just to get it out of my head. And it could be on anything, whether it's political, economical, spiritual, like whatever it is. I just have to get it out, because then I can reflect on it and kind of piece it together, which is actually something I wish I would have done back when I was in school. Kind of
thinking about that with you, thinking about you as a kid with ADD and depression, and thinking about knowing you have these things that are, something that's different than other kids. To me, I can see now how you've channeled them, right? You focus hard on things, and you do things that give you endorphins, right? But I'm curious, like, do you have advice? Would you have advice to your younger self of like what to do back then? Or do you feel like you figured that out? Or, how have you gotten to this place with ADD and depression where you've been able to streamline your life a bit more with your attention?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that it would definitely be, interestingly enough, it would be to stay focused on the things that immediately did catch my attention. I think that's something I've come to learn now. I think that there is attention deficit disorder, and I think it comes along with the creativity surplus syndrome, or CSS. That's my dad and I call it. We joke about that. Sometimes you're paying attention to less. Yes, that's true. I think sometimes you're paying attention to more, or so many other things. And I think there were plenty of things that I was able to focus on, or I would even say would get so fixated on. And my advice to my younger self would have been to dive into those things a little more, as opposed to getting so distracted by what I perceived around me as being normal.
It's interesting, because I think about all these little kids in school and how hard it must be to sit on the rug, when there's all this going on. Yeah, and they're bouncing around from different subjects, and one they might be more interested in, and it's like you expect these kids to sit for so long. And I know there's different cultures that don't expect kids to sit for so long. But yeah, I just think it's so interesting to hear how people thrive as adults after they've been through school as a kid with an attention disorder.
Yeah, and I think too, what's really interesting is you asked the right question, because you said, if you go back, what would your advice be to maybe do something differently? Rather than say, do you regret the way you did it? Because it's hard to say, seeing where I've gotten to now, you take out any small piece of that journey, you don't necessarily know where it ends. So do I regret things? I don't think I do at this point, but there are plenty of things, if I did them again, I would certainly do them differently.
You have clearly done a lot of work to get you to where you are today, and I hope you're proud of yourself. This is incredible. We are so proud of you. We are so excited to cheer you on. I know you don't know the date of when this is going to air yet, but to all of our listeners, make sure you follow us on social media, because once we know that date, we will, of course, plug it. And so, Patrick, we just want to thank you for being here with us, for being vulnerable, sharing your story. It's going to help so many people. So thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to share it. It means a lot, and then your support means a ton too.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your story. It's super inspiring, and so many things that we were unaware of, and we're so happy that you, like Brooke said, were vulnerable and shared it. Next, we have time for our 3 gold stars. Would you like to share yours?
Yes, I would. Okay, so my first gold star is provide yourself minor inconveniences throughout your daily life. And just to elaborate on that, because I did kind of a short one, so it would be easy to lay out. But I think that our society, both culturally and industrially, is very convenience driven. Our convenience has begun to limit us and even debilitate us in ways. And there's ironically nothing convenient about being debilitated. So in strength training, we break down a muscle with small tears to build it back up. And it's kind of the same idea in an approach to life. Your body adapts, it builds, your mind adapts and builds. And so I think it's about the habits you build upon. Offering yourself the opportunity to have minor inconveniences throughout your daily life. Okay, my second gold star. If you have a goal and have laid out a plan to get there, the most important days to work out are the days when you don't want to. I think living in an era of choice and luxury, especially in fitness, which of course it's not always been how humans have approached fitness. And when I say choice and luxury, I know that's not everybody, but for especially the people who have the choice and luxury, I think fitness in this era, there's a lack of immediate consequence in relation to our survival. So if we want to achieve our fitness goals, we need to have that self-discipline. So when you wake up and you feel like you don't want to work out that day, what's going to separate you is being the person who does anyway. My third gold star is never stop learning. Never stop testing, never stop questioning. The scientific approach to life, I personally think, works. And the best scientists are the biggest skeptics of their own theories. So be okay with being wrong, and know that when you discover that you are, it only means that you are one step closer to being right.
Wow.
God. He's a designer. He's a ninja. He's a writer. He's a motivational speaker.
Did you say rapper?
Rapper. Nothing this man can't do.
Yeah, I might have a little surprise for you guys at the end too.
Ooh! I'm excited.
Okay, let's get to it. Next segment is Unleashing Ivy. So these are our rapid fire surprise questions. Are you ready?
Okay, I think so.
All right, first question. Just thinking about American Ninja Warrior, how did you think this is something I could possibly do or be made for?
Is it okay if I say that I didn't? I didn't know if I was made for it? Is that an acceptable answer?
Yeah.
I've always loved to climb. And maybe every kid does. But I thought just the general sense of loving to move, climb, do crazy things made me a good fit for it.
Love it.
I like it. Okay, my question. What are you expecting or hopeful for to really get out of this process of being an American Ninja Warrior and running your race that you don't even know what it is?
I think that I just want to make sure, like I said, that I leave it all out there and that I make the most of the experience and even also the potential platform. If I can affect one person in a positive way, or even just inspire someone else to run the course because I did well on it. I think that would be a wild success in my mind.
Definitely.
Awesome.
All right, last question. What is one thing you wish you would have known sooner?
Oh, wow. That I'm enough.
Ooh.
Can you elaborate at all on that, sir?
Well, I think a lot of the things that we've talked about kind of speaks to that, but I think it's still sometimes my insecurity can come out in the idea that am I enough? Am I enough to be a good husband? Am I enough to be a good father? Am I enough to compete on American Ninja Warrior? I think for whatever reason, that sums it up for me. Believe and trust that I am enough to do the things that I want to do or believe I should be doing.
What habits do you have in place to help you believe that? Is it the note taking and the journaling and the reflection, or do kind of some habits come to mind off the top of your head?
That's another really good question. Yeah, I think writing down the things that I think it's so rapid fire all the time. Writing things down so I can reflect on them. I do practice mindfulness. I do meditate a fair amount, and that calms my mind and I think helps me sort through my inner voice. But I do think it's habits that I've put in place to manage some of the things that I'm not great at. So I've found ways to be organized with a lot of checklists, a lot of reminders, writing stuff down, and then eventually you just get more organized. So I think little things, just the little things, little habits that have helped me come through or follow through on things or succeed in certain ways. And that has definitely helped me believe that I am enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned self-discipline, right? With workouts, whatever it may be, you're keeping these promises that you're making to yourself, in return showing yourself that you're worth it. You can trust yourself.
Yeah. You said that. You said that even better. I like the way you said that. Also, another thing that reminds me that I'm enough many times over again is my wife Bailey is someone I look up to in a lot of ways and has inspired me in a ton of ways. And I have so much to learn from her. She's certainly someone who you could say has made life look easy, but of course it's not. She puts an unbelievable amount of effort and work into everything she does. But knowing that she chose me every day is definitely one of the things that reminds me that I'm enough.
Oh, I love it.
And she is a badass too.
Hell yeah.
You guys are a power couple.
It means nothing coming from me, but she's a total badass.
Oh, it does.
Well, also not only maybe those times that you don't feel enough or that you didn't show up the way you wanted to, the fact that your tendency is to own it and be accountable for it, I hope shows yourself that you are enough, that is such a wonderful thing to do to develop the worthiness of your life and how great things can be, because you do own it. I love that. I think that that's such a beautiful thing that you do. And I think that your life is showing that if you own it, even if it's hard and do all the hard things and create some discipline and own what you might not be great at, you can build any skill, especially with being a lifelong learner too.
Yeah. At risk of putting too many sports references into this podcast, I think I've always said never waste a mistake. If you make every single shot, you never need to practice.
It's only a mistake if you don't learn from it.
Should we keep going with quotes?
Well, speaking of quotes.
Yeah, speaking of quotes. We end every episode with a piece of gold. Patrick, would you like to share yours?
So is it okay if I have two pieces of gold?
Absolutely.
The more gold, the better.
Okay. All right. Before I share it, I know you guys had some surprise questions for me. I just have one little surprise for you. Okay, so bear with me.
Okay.
I'm on the Gold Ivy podcast. They're not owned by Comcast. This is full original OG with the broadcast. BA, well, the initials, they say it all. Won't curse to elaborate. PG with the ball. Competition is sweet, but it's people that make the day, the gold standard type. I'd like to finish and say thank you. Thank you a million times in one for letting me share my story. I'm unleashed and ready to run.
Oh my God. I have chills.
There's
Thank
a
you
first for
that.
everything. That was incredible. Thank you.
He's unleashed and ready to go, baby.
That's right.
Ah,
American Ninja Warrior. No matter what happens, you are our American Ninja Warrior, and we believe in you, and we cannot wait to cheer you on. It's going to be so exciting.
Thanks, you guys.
yes.
Okay. It's okay. The 2 pieces of gold. The first is from my dad, who tends to be quite quotable, but my favorite, and one of my favorite just simple sentiments that he always tells me is, people are more than one thing. My second piece of gold is a lyric from a song I wrote to my wife that I sang for her on our wedding day. And it goes, to find purpose in life is to find comfort with death, born with a blank map and hope to find peace in your last breath.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.